Hi, Jeff. How are you doing?
Good, Alex. How are you?
Very good. We're joined on December 16, coming down the home stretch towards holidays for you.
Yes.
Yeah, school's winding down. So welcome to School of Thought, the podcast. I am Alex Van Tall. What label will I pick this week? I will call myself a researcher this week
Okay, I
because
like that. That's good.
I've been
Good.
nerding out. And I'm a parent, and I'm a teacher as well, but not currently in practice. And I'm sitting with Jeff Hopkins, who is the principal educator at the Pacific School of Innovation and Inquiry in Victoria, BC. Website www.learningstorm.org. I sometimes forget to give the website, so
Good.
yes,
Good.
now we've got it.
Yep.
So how's your week? It's hairy coming into the holidays.
Indeed, it's been you wind it up and then you wind it down. So we're just kind of at the peak between those two right now. So, but it's good. It's going well. It's going well.
Yeah,
Your week
I,
good?
I think teachers are looking forward to a very well earned rest.
I think this year maybe more than any other. We're just not allowed to see anybody, but other than that, it'll be it'll be good.
That's going to be a weird one, hey? Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So today we're going to talk about one of the 20 convictions that you have put together. We're on number 13. They're not in any order that matters to anything other than just itemizing them. But today we're going to talk about how the co-construction of the learning pathways at your school and with your model, the co-construction of the learning pathways is possible and preferred. So
Yep.
there's a few words slash terms slash thinkings in there that we'll break down. But give me the high level, what do you mean when you say the co-construction of the learning pathways is possible and it's preferred?
It means a bunch of different things, but I guess the big ones are that it's not so the learning pathway is not one that is passed down from on high. So it's not a teacher in what often feels like private practice where the teacher decides, this is what my unit plan looks like, so this is what my lesson plans look like. I'm going to plan everything myself, and then I'm going to unload it on my learners or my students when they come in the room. Um, Nor is co-construction a free for all where the learner comes in and says, "Stay away from me, everybody. I'm going to do whatever I want." It's in between there, and it's a partnership really between the school or the teachers in the school and the learners, where they are going through an inquiry process, but there's somebody right beside them as their partner in learning.
Right. And when we were kind of getting all sorted and settled for this episode, you mentioned that this is not, sometimes you get the question or the comment that this is self-directed learning that's
Yeah,
happening at your school. So
yeah,
how do
yeah.
you, how do you, how
Well,
do
I
you
just I
discriminate
try
between?
I just say to people, no, it isn't. But I know what they mean, and I think what they see is they see a lot of learner agency. They see we are an inquiry-based school, and in our case, the learners get to decide what their starting questions are in all of their inquiry processes. It is very personalized,
Mhm.
but it is not self-directed learning in the sense that it's not people either. Self-directed also means too many things. It's not them
I was going to
bunch of
say,
workbooks going deciding what workbook to work on next,
yeah.
but nor is it someone just saying I can just do whatever I want. I mean, they kind of can do whatever they want in a sense, but there's someone there with them, so we know what they're up to, we know where it's going. There's intention behind what they're doing. There is an attachment to a curriculum as well, so that we kind of know all of the stuff you're doing in some way will touch on the things that we say that you must do in BC to graduate, and also that you're challenging yourself appropriately. All the other things we've talked about before, like you're in the zone of proximal development. You're
Yeah.
not just kind of wasting your time, that kind of thing. So the nudging, all of those things that we've talked about before is
Yeah.
all part of the co-construction.
So we'll go deeper into the co-construction for sure, but just something that you were saying a moment ago makes me want to ask, tell me again the pattern of sort of checking in with the learners. Like I know you've got routine check-ins, but also tell me, because some learners will be more self-directed than others, right? They just will.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do you read that and make those check-ins at the right times?
Well, one thing is we do check in really frequently. So the check-in, but you're right, the check-in could look very different depending on what someone needs. So the check-in could be, how does your day look? Do you are you working towards all your goals? Do you need anything from me? And then there might be some specific questions as well, because some people will be, yes, everything's fine, and
Mm,
even if it isn't. And so
right.
the underneath part of that is our learners all use a planning tool called Trello, and we
Mm,
can see specifically what they have planned for themselves that day, that week, working towards those goals in those inquiry lines of inquiry. So that question is a partially informed already by the teachers having access to some of the work that the learners have shared with us. Um, so really, sometimes the question can be very specific, like, oh, I see that today you're planning to do X. Do you have everything you need to do that? Like, for example, we had somebody doing a psychology, kind of an observational experiment to start to develop a hypothesis. So they're going to watch people in a particular setting for a while. And the question was, how are you going to capture that information? And as far as they thought that through was, I'm going to have a white piece of paper and a pen. And so it's like, okay, that's probably not, you might want to have more than that, because it's going to be fast and furious as you decide what to write down. So we talked about a way of creating a bit of a thing that would capture things so that you can record them quickly so you don't miss anything. And then it's going to be easier for you to code it. And, little things like that. So we just get a little, maybe one step, well, not really ahead. We are literally alongside the learner,
right.
making sure that they have what they need, even if they don't know they need it sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference between, that's the advantage of being the adult in this situation, is that, with your life experience, you have access to a wide variety of ideas that this young person won't necessarily have. So when you say you're just sort of walking alongside, yeah, you don't have the answer, but you've got a lot of places, possibilities, people, philosophies, theories, understandings to draw on to then help them on their path.
Absolutely. And sometimes those experiences are things we've done with other learners. Like we
Right.
have somebody right now who's starting an online store, and
Mhm.
there were some things that they were not sure about, and or didn't even know to ask about. And I said, how are you going to do this part? And like, oh, I don't know. It's like, well, we had another learner do this, and here's what they ended up doing after some trial and error.
Right.
And might not want to do the errors. And they're like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. So away they went. So it was our experience, but really a vicarious experience through another learner. um,
Yeah.
and then also we are the connector sometimes too, so that help could be, I think you should go over there and talk to that person because they're doing something that goes really well with what you're doing, and you would hit it off. So we're connecting inquiries too.
Awesome. I want to talk a bit about Trello. I mean, it's a project management tool. I
Yeah,
believe I actually discovered it. I believe I discovered it through my first interactions with PSII, which is the short form of the name for your school.
yeah.
Uh, and I use it now a lot for my project management. So um, do you all have access to the learners Trellos so you can
Yes.
see? Oh yeah. And how
Yeah.
do you keep them accountable for updating it though? Like, because I could imagine some learners would be really good at itemizing things, right?
Yep.
And putting their questions down and writing down, areas for research. And I could see others not being very good at that at all. So how do you get around that?
Well, it's honestly, it in itself is part of the learning. And so there are people they love it. And like after 1 second with it, everything's color coded, and they created 7 new Trello boards of their own. And they said, you could do this. And you're like, no, I didn't know you could do that. So some of them are absolutely incredible at using the tool like I've never seen before. So others are just like, they're not used to planning anything. So part of it is being at the school and saying, you got to plan stuff. Is this good, or is there something you got that's better? And quite often they'll go, actually, this is probably better than anything else I've got. So it's just a habit building, kind of a checking in, helping people do it. Again, co-constructing is sometimes
Yeah.
sitting beside somebody saying, let's update your Trello together today. Let's look at a way you could do that. I will say though,
Yeah.
the tool is so easy to use and so visual that for the most part, the learners really like it. They
Yeah.
actually don't like some other things that we do, like the portfolio, but they really like Trello.
Yeah.
And you can connect everything else to it. So if you've got a bunch of things on a Google Doc, you can put the link to the doc right in your Trello. It's you don't have to recreate it on the Trello board itself.
Yeah.
And we've also pre-populated some Trello columns so that you work. We built it on a Scrum methodology, which is a project management kind of system that
Mhm.
essentially works from left to right, and you move things from left to right in states of doneness. So the far left column is just your starting points, your questions. You
Yeah.
move through that to building out your learning activities, to very specific aspects of your learning activities, into a done column where you drag the little boxes
Yeah.
across your
That's
Trello
one of the
board.
most satisfying parts of using Trello. It's like it gives you that same, I don't know, is it dopamine hit that you get when you crumple up a sticky note, right? Because it's like, I did that one.
It's a very good feeling.
Good
And then
feeling.
and
Yeah.
we can also mention or use the @ symbol with our learners in Trello and flag them and say, hey, I found this resource, you'd like this. So co-construction again, like, you should read this article, or talk to this person, and they can flag us to say, I really need help. I'm trying to find a good article on unified field theory and I can't. And so we use it as a communication tool actually too.
Mhm.
It's a really powerful tool. We're using it more than I actually thought we would. And
Really.
again, most learners, once they have help, they really like it.
Huh. Okay, I'm just writing down an idea for an episode about lines of communication because
Oh
there's
my God.
lots in there we could unpack. Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
let me bring us back to thank you for the Trello dive. That's always worthwhile.
Yeah.
Um, the co-construction of the learning pathways. Now, I want to ask, why is it preferred? Like, why is this a better way of educating rather than, what did you say at the beginning of the podcast? You said it's almost like teachers are in private practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It
Why is
feels
this?
feels like that sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of reasons, and I mean, one is just the ownership that someone has, like from the learner's point of view, when they're part of that co-construction, as opposed to the teacher just delivering it to them. There's some engagement, some ownership. It's less passive. Um, in a lot of schools, someone might say, "What are you going to do today in math?" And the kids have no idea. Like, it's not their responsibility. They're like, "I don't know. I'll find out when I get there." In our school, the teacher might not know. So, although we probably do, but the learner would definitely know. They'd say, what are you going to do today? It's like, well, at 1 o'clock, I'm doing this thing because of this. And, they're very involved in what their learning activities look like, when things are due, what they have planned for themselves. But then the flip side of that, the co-construction is the not just go do whatever you want. And, you know, some people, I think, without that kind of walking alongside, could really be at loose ends or could go down rabbit holes that don't kind of take them towards their goals very much. And they might find themselves, after a period of time, like maybe there's some point at which you check in to report, and it's like, wow, you haven't really done anything that you set out to do. So we don't want to let it just go that far without somebody being there. And really, it doesn't. It's like every day we're checking in with people. So.
Yeah. So and that again, that adds to the feeling of being seen. So your
Definitely.
learners feel seen, they feel cared for, they feel like someone is out there shepherding them, which all that builds trust and loops back. It's a good feedback loop for the community as well. So
Definitely.
many advantages.
Yeah, it's got a lot of advantages. And really, the other part about it that's also quite interesting is that because there's an agreement almost about what a learner is going to do, with some coaching and understanding and support from the teacher, that it's not a matter of like, go do that and then how come you didn't do it. It's like everybody knows that that is what the person wants to do and is going to do. So it's not there's no resentment about someone's been assigned, because they assigned it to themselves with
Yeah.
the teacher. So the teacher thinks it's valuable and the learner thinks it's valuable because we did it together.
Yeah.
So no one thinks, oh, that thing you did was frivolous, or why did the teacher give me that stupid thing to do? Everyone moves ahead happily.
You said that the one of the advantages of co-constructing the learning is that it gives a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
Explain why that is a good thing for a developing human.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, some it's just functional, just ownership means that someone's more likely to follow through on it. So that's important. But then, um, yeah, development wise, and as people are developing executive function ability, for example, um, being kind of in the driver's seat on some things is very powerful, and it's a good experience for someone to have, to sit to again to understand that they've got power in the situation, they've got agency, they've got some control over aspects of their life that in other systems they may not feel like they have any control over. And it's real control. It's not fake, and it's also not like you're responsible for things but you don't have any any control over them. That's a terrible feeling.
Right.
Um,
So it's like it
so
hits at that sweet spot, right? Where we're going to give you just enough that you could definitely trip over your shoelaces, but
yeah,
you're not going to fall off the cliff.
yeah, we're not going to let you fall off the cliff. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And again, it's so personalized that there's some people we let them, run pretty far before kind of grabbing on. But
Yeah.
it just depends on the person and what we think they need at the time. And some people you just don't, you just want to let them go just because they've never, you can just tell they've never had an opportunity to do that before. And
Mhm.
I don't know, it's like when you take a 2-year-old and you stick them outside on a lawn and bare feet, they just run. It's like, let them
Mhm.
run. It's like, it's going to be okay. That's what they want to do. So
Yeah.
a lot of our learners, when they come here, they've never, ever had an opportunity to co-construct learning before. And they usually like it. They don't always though. But once they get the hang of it, they usually want to run.
Yeah, and I know you've said before that there's a bit of an onboarding process, right? Like sometimes you get that fight, flight, freeze response, like a freeze response when people come to PSI because they're like, I don't even know where to begin, you
Yep,
know? So
yep.
you have to kind of get them over that hump and then get them to trust. I can see it being a bit of a process. Trust themselves, trust the teachers, trust the process.
Yeah, and it's so personalized too that sometimes I think people don't know it right at the beginning. They go, "Oh, this is great! I can learn all the things I'm interested in. They're really important to me." But then you are bringing so much of your real self to the school and exposing it that that can be a little bit daunting too. Like
Right.
every day I'm working on things that are, exposing my core values and beliefs and, um, investigating my deepest philosophical questions. And it's like,
Yeah.
I would really like someone to just give me a worksheet right now,
Yeah.
so
I
that
can,
I'm not.
yeah. That makes sense. I had not actually thought of that, but you're right. If learning is to be meaningful, not always, but it often will be deeply personal. So there's that element of trust as well.
Yeah, it's very, and I hadn't thought of that actually, to be honest, when we started the school. I just thought what a joy it will be for people to work on things that are, near and dear to their hearts. And it is, but there are times when you just go, this is too much of me out there that I'm
Yeah.
sharing all the time. So yeah, trust is really important. The co-construction has to, make sure that we're not tromping on people or ever giving someone the impression that something that they're doing is, any kind of a criticism against them as a person or, their values or beliefs or anything like that.
Mhm.
Just helping them learn. That's it.
Yeah. Wow. I could see, I mean, this is just such a teaching in an environment like this would bring you very quickly to a coaching approach, you
It
know.
does. Absolutely. It does. I mean, we've even talked about, maybe we should call ourselves coaches, but sometimes we are also teachers where we are the person who has the knowledge that we're, imparting.
Yeah.
I don't even know what we should call ourselves, to be honest, but sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's mentoring, sometimes it's teaching,
Yeah.
sometimes we're learning alongside, sometimes we're I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but yeah, coaching for sure. Probably most often.
Yeah. I want to ask you, if I think about teachers who are in a traditional school setting, squeaky chair, sorry, uh, in a more, there's just a few more guidelines, a few more rules that you have to kind of color within the lines. What tips would you give? Like, how can people begin to enable the co-construction of learning,
Mhm.
but not yet, if they're not in a full inquiry model like PSI.
I think there's a lot of steps you can take. I was actually just having a nice Twitter conversation with somebody late last night about this, a newish teacher who was
As is
asking me.
Jeff's tendency. By the way, people, if you haven't discovered Jeff on Twitter, go check it out because he's very active. Carry on.
I love Twitter, but anyway, I'll get into that another time. It's just, to me, it's the equivalent of the punk mosh pit, and you got to go in there and you're like ready, you're right in there. It's just great. But anyway, enough about that. It's my analogy for Twitter. But I find it to be an incredible place for the educational community. It's actually one of the
It
best places I've ever found for sharing ideas and debating things. It's just wonderful. But this new teacher was asking this question, and so anyway, the answer was, they were an English teacher, and it was like, well, when you're assigning, I don't know, like let's say a creative writing project to a class, um, first of all, give them as much freedom as possible in terms of like subject and all that sort of thing, but also um, ask them what their writing goals are, and ask them in an assessment kind of conversation, what would you like me to watch for? What do you want me to pay attention to?
yeah.
What are you working on right now, and what would you like me to pay attention to? And then all of a sudden, everything is personalized, and they are now involved in the assessment process, which means they're really involved in the assignment. They're co-constructing the assignment. And so they might say, oh, I'd really like you to pay attention to my, how natural does the dialogue seem among my characters in my story? And someone else might be, I really want you to make sure that I have complete sentences. They're two completely different sets of goals.
Mm.
And as a teacher, it liberates you, from the tyranny of the red pen, which is, I'm going to mark every single thing on this paper that is wrong or awkward or whatever. There
Mhm.
may be things that you want to bring to their attention, but if the focus is what the learner said they want the focus to be, they're more than likely going to look at what you have to say.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I used to be the other kind of English teacher, which is mark, 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 and then you hand it back and the kids go, what's the mark? They go, 8 out of 10, it's gone. They don't read anything you wrote because they don't care, because it doesn't matter.
Because it doesn't matter. Yeah. So I see this is an easy way to, like anybody can do it from where they stand right now.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Okay, well, that's very cool. Um, Now, did we unpack everything around this one? That the co-construction of learning pathways is possible, A, and preferred, B?
Yeah, I think possible probably was your last question. And I know that some people will say there are courses and subjects where it may not seem as possible. Like they might say, well, how do I do this in math? Um,
Mm.
or how do I do this when I don't even know if the learners have a language to cope, to be a partner in this construction? And so I think part of I guess the toolbox you have to have as a teacher here is you need to help people learn how to construct their learning. So part of the learning is very meta, but learning how to construct learning. So we spend a lot of time talking to learners about, you know, how do you set a competency goal? How do you know what it is that you're setting out to learn? How would you know if you learned it? How would a teacher check for understanding? As a teacher, I think that's one of the hardest things there is checking for understanding. Um, so the learners actually gain kind of a literacy that they wouldn't normally get when they're a passive recipient of the lesson. And so they're learning how to do this as a skill in and of itself. And so that's really important, I think.
That's really important. And again, that's one of those 21st century skills that is going to really differentiate people who can be self-directed in the workplace, who can educate themselves. I think we've talked before about how interesting the next number of years will be to see the shifts in the post-secondary landscape. Because again, on Twitter, there's a lot of really great conversations about learning. And one of the things I've seen recently is, an increasing observation that you're going to be teaching yourself. So, you're going to choose your own learning pathway. There's nothing you can't actually teach yourself, except for there are certain schools that, if you're going to be a health practitioner or an engineer, you need that learning. But,
Yes.
you know, for going down your own rabbit holes and deciding what you're going to up your game on, right? You can do a lot of that learning on your own. So this learning how to construct learning is a super valuable competency to be helping these people get.
Yeah, I think it is, and it was quite cute. The other day, I was watching one of our learners using the language that we use to help them learn how to do this with another younger learner. We
Oh,
have a
wow.
dark room here at the school this year, and one of our kids has pretty much single-handedly constructed the dark room and is teaching other people how to use it. But she was talking to another learner saying, there's like 10,000 things that I can teach you about the dark room. What is it you'd like me to focus on? Like,
Wow.
what would you like me to focus on for you as you're kind of doing your first, set of prints? And I was just listening and going, wow,
Yeah.
good,
What a-
good teaching. And she also
Absolutely.
said she's finding it, she really likes teaching things to people. So it's kind of neat to see it happening. We've
Yeah.
also had some learners who worked with mentors, and where we just talked to a geneticist yesterday with a couple of kids, and they were asking questions about gene editing and things like that. And I don't know. It's like I don't know. I didn't even know half the things that she was saying. But they were good enough at knowing how to construct their own learning that they could take this expert who isn't a teacher and help them tell them things in a way that allowed them to do what they were trying to do for their learning goals. So they knew how to ask questions of this person to turn them into a good resource for them, because they know how to do that, instead of just, I'm just going to let the person talk and then see what happens. They kind of took control of the interview with this person who should have probably been really intimidating to them,
Right.
and wasn't. It was
Yeah.
really, really nice to see.
Yeah, that there's huge value in learning to shape your own questions, right? Like
Yeah,
much of the learning, this is pretty cool, this example that you've given, because in order to shape good questions, you have to have a handle on the information you are seeking,
yeah,
right?
yes,
It's like a bit of a feedback loop. So
it
that's
is. It really
wild.
is. It's a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, I just have to say, like, as we wind this one down, I gotta say I'm so stoked for the next one, which is
Oh yeah, me too.
we'll just do a little teaser. It's about self-regulation. So
Yeah,
Jeff and I are really excited about, we'll just be having a week-long session for that one.
that'd be really long. Marathon. Bring
Right.
something to drink, and yeah,
Yeah,
pajamas, and
yeah.
yeah,
Bring your food and get everything all settled around you.
yeah.
Yeah, well, always good to chat with you, Jeff. And for everybody who's watching and listening and learning, share this far and wide. School of Thought there are many more thoughts to come. And the idea here is, what was it? Democratizing access to transformation literacy. This was a
I like
statement
that.
yeah, I like that. Jeff and I were talking about that before we hit record today. So that's the whole point of this podcast, is to get, here's some tools, here's what's possible, here's a person who's done this for 7-8 years, and it's possible. Here's, all the supports that we can give, we're going to give. So yeah, so Jeff, thanks for being game to do that, and everybody who's listening, thanks for being game to try it out.
Yeah, thanks. We'll co-construct this learning with you. Yeah.
We're doing it. I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thanks, Alex.